In the summer of 1943, the B-17 Flying Fortress, known as Hell's Angel, took to the skies on a critical bombing mission over Germany. The crew consisted of 10 men, each with a specific role, and they all shared a common purpose: to support the war effort and bring their comrades one step closer to victory. As they flew through the clouds, the crew felt a mixture of adrenaline and fear. They had trained for this moment, but no amount of preparation could fully equip them for the realities of combat. The risks that lay ahead were familiar to them: anti-aircraft fire from below and enemy fighter planes that would do anything to protect their homeland. The pilot, Captain John Miller, had flown multiple missions already. He was known for his calm demeanor, even when facing danger. He glanced over at his co-pilot, Lieutenant Frank Carter, who was checking the instruments, ensuring everything was functioning as it should. "We're ready, just like the last time," Captain Miller reassured him. Meanwhile, in the bomb bay, Staff Sergeant Tom Hayes stood by the bombs, mentally going through the checklist. He thought of the people back home, the family and friends who looked forward to their return. Every mission felt weighty with that sense of responsibility. As they approached the target area in Germany, the tension increased. The crew was trained to keep their spirits high, and they shared stories and jokes over the intercom. This camaraderie helped them cope with the grim reality of what they faced, a reality marked by uncertainty and danger. Suddenly, the first explosions erupted below them. Anti-aircraft fire sliced through the sky, and the crew felt the rumble of the engines. "Flak!" shouted Sergeant Mike Daniels, the tail gunner, who had kept watch for enemy fighters. The crew braced themselves as the aircraft jolted, but they were determined. They had a duty to fulfill, and retreat was not an option. "Steady, everyone," Captain Miller called out, tightening his grip on the controls. "We've trained for this. Stay focused." He pushed the plane onward, navigating through bursts of fiery shells that exploded around them. As they neared the target, danger was ever present. A squadron of enemy fighters suddenly emerged, attacking with deadly precision. Hell's Angel jostled violently as Miller maneuvered to evade their fire. The crew responded quickly, each man knowing their role in defending the aircraft. To them, this wasn't just a mission, it was a fight for survival. Each man operated with a sense of purpose, relying not only on their skills, but also on the bond they shared as a crew. The noise of the engines and gunfire filled the air, but moments of quiet determination shone through as they prepared to drop their payload. As the target approached, the crew lined up their sights. With a series of synchronized actions, they released the bombs, watching them fall away into the distance. It was a bittersweet moment, fulfilling their mission but knowing lives were impacted by that decision. With their bombs away, it was time to head back, but the fight wasn't over yet. The enemy fighters were still on their tail. Captain Miller and Lieutenant Carter worked furiously to evade the incoming attacks. Hell's Angel survived intense gunfire, but the crew knew better than to let their guard down even for a moment. As they navigated towards home, relief washed over them, but they also carried the weight of what they had done. They knew the risks, and they had faced them head-on. In that moment, they were not just soldiers, they were brothers in arms, united by their shared experiences, hopes, and fears, soaring through the skies with a mission still ahead of them. As they drew closer to their target, the sky erupted with flak bursts, lighting up the air with explosions. The crew of Hell's Angel felt the aircraft shudder violently as enemy fire rained down around them. It was a chaotic scene, and everyone braced themselves for the impact. In the back of the plane, Sergeant Mike Daniels, the tail gunner, was quick to report. "We've been hit, tail section compromised." His voice crackled over the intercom, tinged with urgency. The crew knew that losing control of the aircraft could be disastrous. Captain Miller's heart raced as he glanced at the control panels. Warning lights blinked, and the plane felt unstable. "Frank, help me assess the damage," he shouted to Lieutenant Carter. Together, they worked to regain control, knowing their lives depended on it. Every crew member had a job, and they relied on each other in moments like this. Staff Sergeant Tom Hayes, who had just dropped their payload, felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He knew that a hit to the tail meant trouble, and the crew's safety was now uncertain. "Hang tight, everyone," Captain Miller called out, trying to keep the crew's spirits up despite the gravity of the situation. The aircraft swayed, struggling to maintain its course. With each bump and jolt, the crew felt the tension build. Lieutenant Carter's hands flew over the controls, adjusting as best as he could. "We need to stabilize it, or we'll be at risk of losing the plane." The noise of the explosions and gunfire enveloped them, mixing with their own shouts to one another. The bombardier, Corporal Joe Miller, was tense as he scanned the skies through the window. "Enemy fighters are still out there. We need to get out of here." In moments of crisis, every member of the crew focused on their training. They had drilled for emergencies like this, but it was always different when it was real. They had to trust one another and rely on their instincts. Through sheer determination, Captain Miller adjusted the altitude in a bid to evade the incoming fire. The tail section was damaged, but they were still flying. "Keep her steady, we've made it this far," he urged, focused on navigating the chaos. The aircraft trembled as it fought against the enemy's relentless attacks. The sound of machine gun fire peppered the air, and the crew was alert, ready for anything. Their hearts pounded as they glanced at each other, unspoken fears mingling with a fierce will to survive. As they moved away from the flak bursts, they wouldn't forget the danger they faced that day. Each man had people waiting for him back home, and they were determined to return safely. Mike's voice echoed again from the tail, "I think we're losing altitude." The urgency in his tone jolted the crew. With quick thinking, Captain Miller pushed the plane harder, trying to stabilize their flight path. In that moment, they realized they were not just fighting for a mission, but for each other. They were brothers, risking their lives in a shared battle. Emerging from the chaos, they knew they had to stick together. Win or lose, they had to make it back together. In a critical moment, disaster struck. Suddenly, the engines of Hell's Angel began to sputter, sputtering noises echoing through the cockpit. A dense cloud of smoke started to fill the air, wrapping around the men as they fought against panic. The smell of burning oil was suffocating, and alarms blared relentlessly. Captain Miller's heart raced, but panic was not an option. He took a deep breath, focused on his crew, and gave a firm order. "Stay in your positions. We're not giving up on this mission." The determination in his voice cut through the chaos, and the men nodded, knowing they had no choice but to trust their pilot. Beneath the strain of the situation, Lieutenant Carter quickly scanned the instruments, trying to make sense of the malfunction. The cockpit was thick with smoke, and visibility was dropping. "We need to figure out what's wrong," he shouted over the noise, his hands moving swiftly as he checked gauges and switches. At the same time, Sergeant Mike Daniels kept his eyes alert from the tail, aware that any moment could bring more enemy fire. "We've got to get clear of this smoke," he urged, trying to communicate the urgency of their predicament. The crew needed to stay focused, even as fear gripped at their throats. Captain Miller fought to regain control of the aircraft amidst the chaos. He pulled at the yoke, coaxing the plane to stabilize, but it wobbled dangerously. "Come on, Hell's Angel. Don't fail us now," he muttered, feeling a sense of desperation wash over him. He had flown countless missions, but this felt different. This felt like a life-or-death struggle. Outside the cockpit, the world was nothing but a blur of clouds and smoke. The sound of explosions continued, reminding them that danger was not far behind. Yet, with every ounce of strength, Miller pressed on, determined to keep his crew safe. "Check the fuel systems," he called out to Carter, who immediately focused his attention on the fuel gauges, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We might have a leak," Carter responded, his voice steady but laced with concern. They were now battling against time and fate, trying to divert the impending disaster. "Brace yourselves," Miller shouted suddenly as the plane lurched again. He swiftly maneuvered to keep it level, feeling the crew's tension rise with each tremor of the aircraft. He could see the fear in his men's eyes, but also recognized their unwavering resolve. Despite the smoke closing in around them, a sense of camaraderie grew stronger amongst the crew. They were united by purpose, by their commitment to each other and the mission at hand. Fighting against the odds was their only option. As the engines coughed and sputtered once more, Captain Miller pushed forward with everything he had. "Stay with me," he urged, his voice a steady anchor in the storm of chaos. He knew they had experienced tough times before, but he had never faced anything quite like this. The smoke thickened, but the crew remained vigilant, determined not to part ways with their beloved aircraft. They would fight for Hell's Angel, just as it had fought for them. And in that moment, they were more than just soldiers. they were a family, ready to face whatever lay ahead together. Just as they struggled to regain control, enemy fighters swooped in, spotting the damaged Hell's Angel. The sound of their engines roared like thunder as they attacked, determined to take the stricken aircraft down. The crew felt a mixture of fear and adrenaline. They were under siege, but they weren't about to give up without a fight. Captain Miller, still fighting to stabilize the plane, barked orders to his crew. "Man your guns. We need to protect ourselves." His voice cut through the chaos, igniting a spark of determination in their hearts. Sergeant Mike Daniels, still in the tail position, quickly readied his machine gun. "I see them. Coming in fast," he shouted, his hands steady on the weapon. Every second counted, and he knew he couldn't let fear take over. He lined up his sights, waiting for the right moment to pull the trigger. The aircraft shook as enemy bullets struck the fuselage. The crew felt the impacts reverberate through their bodies, but they pressed on, each man refusing to falter. Staff Sergeant Tom Hayes in the bomb bay shouted, "I can't believe we're still flying." "Keep it together?" His voice was fueled by a mix of disbelief and determination. Every man knew his role, and they worked together as best they could. Lieutenant Carter helped man the side-mounted machine gun, his eyes scanning the skies for any approaching threats. He focused on the tactics they had trained for, moving between the gun and assisting Captain Miller with the controls. They were all giving it their all. The enemy fighters came in waves, diving low and firing relentlessly. Mike pulled the trigger, unleashing a stream of bullets at the nearest fighter. "Got one!" he shouted triumphantly as he saw it veer off course, smoke trailing behind. The small victory reignited hope in the crew, reminding them that they could still fight back. Despite their damage, Hell's Angel continued to soar through the skies. The crew's spirit held firm amid the storm. Captain Miller gritted his teeth as he controlled the plane, weaving to evade the enemy fire while maintaining altitude. "We're not going down today," he yelled, filling the cockpit with resolve. The battle raged on, and the noise of gunfire mingled with the roar of engines. They were fighting for their lives and the chance to return home. As another enemy fighter closed in, gunfire erupted from the side gunner's position, and Carter shouted, "Stay sharp, we'll take them down together." One of the enemy fighters suddenly exploded, hit by Mike's accurate fire. The crew cheered within the cramped space of their aircraft, the sound of victory boosting their spirits even as smoke continued to fill the cockpit. Yet, the danger was far from over. More enemy planes circled like vultures, looking for an opportunity to finish them off. But Hell's Angel wasn't about to back down. The crew fought bravely, each man drawing on their training and their bond, knowing they could rely on one another. As the battle continued, Captain Miller focused on keeping the plane airborne. His eyes darted between the horizon and the instruments, adjusting constantly to keep Hell's Angel steady and defiant through the onslaught. Despite the damage, the crew's bravery shone. They were outnumbered, but together, they were determined to keep fighting and protect each other for as long as they could. As the battle raged on and the aircraft trembled under enemy fire, Captain Miller faced a grim reality. The damage to Hell's Angel was severe, and the chances of a safe landing were slim. He knew that bailing out was an option, but it would mean leaving his crew and their beloved plane behind. With a heavy heart, he made a difficult decision. "Listen up, everyone," he called out, his voice firm despite the chaos around them. "We're aiming for that patch of open land over there. I believe we can make it." The crew shared anxious glances but understood the importance of sticking together. Each man was committed to the mission and to one another. They had trained for moments like this, and now was the time to act. "We're with you, Captain," Lieutenant Carter shouted, feeling a surge of loyalty and determination. There was no question, these men would stand by their pilot and face whatever came next. As they approached the designated landing area, the aircraft continued to shudder violently. Smoke filled the cockpit, making it hard to see. But Miller kept his eyes focused on the ground below. He gripped the yoke tightly, maneuvering the plane as best as he could. "I'll get her down," he reassured the crew, trying to instill confidence in them. They all believed in him. Every man knew this landing wouldn't be easy, but giving up was never an option. The landscape rushed up to meet them, patches of green and brown, a welcome sight amidst the chaos. Miller adjusted the descent, fighting against the urge to pull up. The rear gunners reported enemy fighters still circling above, but they concentrated on the task at hand. "Keep it steady," shouted Mike from the tail, firing at the enemy as the ground drew closer. He could see the desperation in his comrades' faces and vowed not to let them down. "Brace for impact," Captain Miller yelled as the plane finally touched down. It bumped and rattled, skidding across the ground. The crew felt the thrill of survival mixed with tension. They were still in danger, but they were committed to each other until the very end. As Hell's Angel came to a halt, the crew quickly assessed their surroundings. They were safe for the moment, but they needed to act fast. Enemy fighters were still hunting for them. "Get ready to bail if we have to," Carter shouted, his eyes scanning the horizon. The crew stayed alert, adrenaline pumping through their veins. They knew they had done everything possible to protect each other and their aircraft. In a show of solidarity, the crew remained by their posts, refusing to abandon the plane or each other. They were brothers in arms, committed to fighting together. Captain Miller felt a wave of pride wash over him as he looked at his crew. Despite the odds, they had chosen to stand together. No matter what came next, they had each other's backs, and that was what mattered most. With a final push of determination, the crew of Hell's Angel fought against the odds to guide their B-17 towards the ground. The plane shuddered as it descended, the wheels screaming against the earth. It was a rough landing, jarring every man inside as they felt the aircraft bump and skid across the uneven terrain. When the plane finally came to a stop, there was a moment of silence. The crew exchanged glances, trying to grasp what had just happened. They were bruised and battered, gasping for fresh air as they unbuckled their harnesses. Slowly, the reality of their survival began to sink in. They had made it back safely, together. As the smoke drifted away from the wreckage, they climbed out of the damaged aircraft. Sergeant Mike Daniels was the first to push through the tail gunner's hatch. He took a deep breath of the fresh air, letting the relief wash over him. "We did it!" he exclaimed, looking back at Hell's Angel, a mixture of pride and sorrow in his eyes. One by one, the rest of the crew followed, each man emerging with a sense of camaraderie that had been forged in the heat of battle. Lieutenant Carter helped Corporal Tom Hayes out, who had banged his arm during the landing. "You good?" Carter asked, concern etched on his face. "Yeah, just a little bruised. Nothing we can't handle." Hayes replied with a grin, shaking off the roughness of the flight. Despite their injuries, their spirits were high. They had faced tremendous danger together and refused to back down. Captain Miller surveyed the scene, feeling immense pride in his crew. They had shown bravery and loyalty through one of the most harrowing experiences of their lives. This was what it meant to be part of the U.S. Army Air Forces during WWII, a spirit of camaraderie that united them, no matter the odds. As they gathered around the wreckage, the reality of their survival settled in. They were alive, and they had fought fiercely for each other. They shared hugs and exchanged words of encouragement, every camaraderie moment reinforcing the bond they now had. "We're going to get through this together," Miller said, looking each of his crew members in the eyes. They nodded, united in their resolve to stick together, no matter what came next. This day would forever be etched in their memories, not just as a mission, but as a testament to their strength as a team. Though their aircraft lay in ruins, the spirit of Hell's Angel lived on in each of them, a reminder of the courage it took to continue fighting. They might have faced defeat, but in that moment, they understood that true victory was about loyalty and friendship. They were fighters, brothers united by their shared experience, and that was something no enemy could ever take away.